Alright, hello guys, how's it going? In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at that big upcoming winter storm, multiple rounds of severe weather as we enter into a kind of early spring-like pattern. There is so much to go over, and we're going to be breaking it down within this video. Anyways, before I get started with this video though, I would ask that you do subscribe if you do like weather-related content. I would also ask that you like the video and leave a comment down below. And then for today's comment of the day, I want to know, do you think that end of February into March are going to be above average severe weather activity based on the pattern we're kind of finding ourselves enter into? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and I'll be picking one of those for tomorrow's video. Now here we are taking a look at the national radar imagery, and the interesting thing here is that we're seeing a pattern that just looks basically like the opposite of the pattern we were in. Now, most of the areas we're going to be talking about today are going to be in this northwestern corner of the United States. I know you guys thought that I just never talk about the West, but today on the radar imagery, we're going to ignore most of these regions except for this lake effect right here, because there's nothing going on, just like it was in the West, and now it's not that way in the West anymore, so now we need to talk about the West. So that's just how it works. I can't control where the weather goes. All you can do is talk about where it is at. So now let's take a look at this. Keep in mind, if you are in the East, if you are anywhere that I just circled out that I'm not going to be talking about, once we get into the model guidance, I'm going to be talking about from West Coast to East Coast, so stay tuned, or you can go ahead and skip ahead. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of this stuff that's going on, because we have a lot of interesting things going on. We see this flow up here is generally heading southward. We see there is a bit of spin going on in this region, which is pretty interesting. And then we have a lot of this snowfall up here for northeastern Nevada, southern Idaho there. We see western regions of Wyoming and southern Montana, but that even goes into more central Montana as well, where we're having very heavy snowfall there in the whites and blues. It's actually gotten colder there, as you can see, as things have switched from rain to snowfall. So generally, a lot of precipitation ongoing here for a lot of these regions. Now, as we move up into the north-central United States, you can see that we do have a lot of this snowfall here. I would say generally, maybe picking up a dusting, maybe a little bit more for these regions. This is moving quite quickly, so I wouldn't be surprised if there's not a lot going on. But it is heavier in some spots, especially those bright whites, if you can make those out. That is where we're even heavier than those darker grays. So it's interesting, is this is all kind of associated with this storm system, and we're going to see this flow eventually to the south here. So the low pressure system will be down here in the deep south, and then we're going to see it move up and basically move across the country is what we're going to see happen over time. And that's going to lead towards a lot of impacts here to the north. But not only that, we will be taking a look at a lot of severe weather for this region, well, maybe even this region, and we're going to need to really track that. So moving forward, we are going to talk more about that, but for now we do have just some general storminess up here, and I guess we should take a look at that lake effect right up here. Well, we do have some worth noting. This area has just been seeing so much lake effect snow lately. Day after day we keep seeing that, and then near Traverse City there, or Traverse City, I guess better yet, we had some lake effect going on, but that has come to an end now. But as we take a look over here near Rochester, Syracuse, this region, here we have had this heavier band of lake effect snowfall heading on shore. Let's see what towns are being mostly impacted by that. So areas over here, very thin band in here. Mexico seeing some lake effect snowfall. I never thought I would say that one. But near I-80 here, we are seeing some of that heavier snowfall. It started out down here in the more southern regions, but it has really aligned itself further and further north over time. As you can see, it heads further and further northward. And now Adams, Pulaski, Mansville, Sandy Creek, those are the regions that are mostly seeing this snowfall at this point. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take a look at some modeled guidance, because we have multiple major storms on the way. We have multiple days of severe weather to talk about, and we have multiple different snowfall events to talk about. So many things that we need to go over in just a moment. Alright, now here we are taking a look at our European model. I actually have to switch this back to the 0Z run. There we go. We won't be able to get as far on the 6Z run. What's weird for you guys that are trying to look at the models yourselves, the GFS model, all 4 runs in the day are the same exact length. They all go out to like 360 something hours out. But the European model, only the 12 p.m. update and the 12 a.m. updates, those two are the only ones that actually go out to full range, which on the European model is the 240 hours. The 6Z and the 18Z don't get as much. So that's why you always see me switch back to the 0Zs, because I'm trying to get the full range of what we need to see. Now we see this storm here. We see that the general flow is southward. So that's what I was talking about earlier, and it pulls that trough down. We talked about that yesterday. So the trough here will be centered in the west. We'll see a ridge build in through midweek here in the east, and that's going to bring pleasant weather, a lot like last week. And then it's going to kind of come crashing down again, just like last week. So we're getting in this early spring pattern where we see these warm-ups and these cool-downs. So we have a lot of snowfall going on up here, guys, for the Rockies, the mountains out here in the Cascades and the Sierra Nevadas as well. We're going to see a lot of stuff built in here for the middle of the United States over the next couple of frames here on this one. You see how just rapidly that moves in. We see the trough here, ridge about here, and that right there, because of where the trough is centered and the ridge is centered, it just creates a lot of friction in here, and that's why we see that dramatic storminess take place. We're seeing tons of snowfall here on the northern end, especially the kind of northwestern end, almost just the western end in general here for Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas. We see this ice storm in here. Again, this has been a recent trend on this storm, has been the increased ice that we're seeing from the models for this one. And by the way, during this whole event, we're seeing tons of severe weather in here. We're going to talk about that in just a moment once we're through with this. But we see that there's a big warm up, like I said, and then this. So there's warm air heading out ahead of it, and then this cold front right here is where we're seeing that precipitation. So that's rolling through, and that's your kind of prototypical severe weather really set up, like I said yesterday. And then that eventually crashes through. So my areas that I really think severe weather will be possible, well, I think it's something like this through the entire weekend. I think all the way to the East Coast. We have a general thunderstorm risk for all of these regions at some point. You know what? Let's just go straight into the severe weather real quick. Here is our Storm Prediction Center outlook here for the first day of severe weather, which will be Tuesday, not Tuesday, Wednesday. I was like, Tuesday's today. Yeah, so Wednesday, we see that there's a general thunderstorm risk here in this lighter green region. We also see down here for Florida. And then in the darker green region there, that's where our marginal risk of severe weather is. So that's where we start to get isolated severe weather expected. And then this yellow region, this big yellow region for Oklahoma, Texas, and Arkansas, and a couple surrounding states as well. That is where we expect scattered severe weather to be possible, and really I think they're keeping it open for a possible enhanced risk at least in there. These wintertime events really don't need a lot of CAPE, convective available potential energy, which is basically thunderstorm food. We have pretty limited amounts of that throughout this storm. It's basically just something between temperature and humidity. They take those two numbers, whatever the dew point and then the temperature is, and they come up with CAPE, and that's what the models do. So those are basically the two parameters that we really watch for severe weather to take place with thunderstorm development. But in these cases, there's such a severe difference between the warm-ups and the cool-downs, and there's so much shear available that really you don't need as much of that thunderstorm fuel to really get damaging wind, tornadoes to spin up this time of year. These winter events can be really, really hazardous for that region, or for that reason, better yet. You don't really need a lot. We do have the individual outlooks here. So tornado, we have a 2% chance within 25 miles of a given location there within the green, a 5% chance there within 25 miles of a given location there within the brown. So this will be a bit of a tornado day. Wind, we have a 5% chance there in the brown, a 15% chance there in the yellow, and then hail, it's the same story there, except it's a little bit larger. Now, day 3, so this will be Thursday. Like I mentioned, we do have this general thunderstorm risk all the way up into the mid-Atlantic and the Ohio Valley. So all these areas expect thunderstorms to be possible. Then this darker green is the marginal risk that is very, very large at this point. Over 10 states are in there right now, I would estimate. And then we see the yellow here is our slight risk again, which is much bigger than the day before on Wednesday. And I do expect this to be the worst severe weather day out of all of them. So I would expect potentially an enhanced risk in there as well, somewhere in Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Tennessee, something in that range. But yeah, this is not looking good, and I even expect the next day on Friday there could be some lingering severe weather along the eastern seaboard as well, so we'll be watching for that also. That will be day 4 later on. So let's move back to the model guidance here. Here we are, and we're taking a look at this. We can see that we're now past that severe weather event. So now a trough is centered in the east and a ridge is centered back in the west. We go back to that old pattern, which just does not encourage severe weather when we're looking like this. that's not when you're looking for severe weather. You're looking for this, the trough in the west, ridge in the east, and then this to be progressively moving eastward to shove out this ridge. That is when we see bad severe weather take place, and you see that's exactly what happens here. You see those blue lines horseshoeing down? That is our trough, and you see how it just comes in and it crushes that ridge out. That is a severe weather setup, really. But you won't see anything like that when the trough is already centered in the east and the ridge is in the west. So that's why we get into a quieter pattern when we see this happen. But later on in the pattern, what ends up happening is we flip back. Okay, we flip back again by February 22nd to a trough in the west, ridge in the east. We get another low pressure system here bringing a big snowstorm, and we see more severe weather developing here in the deep south. Again, that's Tuesday, December 22nd. And we see a lot of storminess later on as we really reach into this pattern. This would be really bad, guys, because the trough is centered about like this, and the jet stream does this. It's very, very, that kink is very dramatic there in the trough, like I mentioned. And that's just never a good sign. So on this frame, again, first off, we would have a major ice storm if this was correct. This is 240 hours out, so take it with a grain of salt for sure. But we also have a lot of snowfall, and I would expect a lot of severe weather down here. So we could be getting these storms that roll through the central United States. It seems like the upcoming pattern for sure, in my opinion, where we get a lot of these ridges to set up in the east because of the southeast ridge that has been expected to be persistent through the winter. It was in December, but really it slowed down in January and for a while there in February. But now we're seeing this kind of return of this big ridge and big warm-ups in the east, and then these dramatic cold fronts that come through. We're seeing multiple of these on this model just over the next 10 days. And really, I don't expect that pattern to switch anytime soon. So we're going to have to just watch for that very, very closely, guys, because obviously that has a lot of implications with it. And then we have these strong low pressure systems coming from the Pacific and entering into that trough in the west, ridge in the east pattern. That adds a whole new element. So I do expect a lot of extreme and in general, extremely interesting weather to take place over the next 10 days and possibly beyond if we're really in this pattern that this European model is suggesting. But again, stick with us daily, subscribe so you get those daily updates because we're going to be tracking this pattern daily. Every single morning we have an upload that we're talking about this, so stay tuned, guys, because it's going to be really, really interesting to find out what happens. For today's confidence tab, we are at a 4 out of 6 still. I haven't really increased my confidence because the GFS and the European model still have not come together fully. And I'm not even sure at this point if I ever will move up to a 5 out of 6, really. For today's comment of the day, I asked you guys, do you think we expect to stay in a pattern where we see these storms enter in through the central United States, these very major storms? Again, what we just talked about, bringing those major impacts. And James Marsh said, I think we will enter a brief, quiet, and mild period for the majority of the country. Then the polar vortex will make another appearance and bring more frequent cold shots and storms. Now, while I don't fully agree, I do think that it is possible the polar vortex will make a return. We did see it enter in a lot for January. And that would bring another colder pattern for a lot of folks. And could actually add an interesting element to the pattern that's upcoming if you add that in. I mean, it would just be even more extreme, which is crazy to think about. For today's patron highlight of the day, I want to thank you all for supporting the channel, but especially our platinum patrons. Bill Crates, James Wade, Devin Eagle, Lily Pan, Mandy Birchfield, Patrick Strickland, and Dave Scott as well as Donna Carnes. I don't know why I always want to end it there. For today's Diamond patron highlight of the day, it's not usually what I say. Bill Roberts, Marcus Connolly, Noah Harley, Michael Kudalesa, Catbite, Charles Dennett, Bill Dallas, Gary's, and John Khaleesi also. I don't know what's getting into me today, guys, but here's our channel members highlight of the day. Catbite, Stephen Fan, and Jeremy Cox as well. I guess at least I didn't mess that one up. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Be sure to smash that like button, leave a comment down below, and subscribe for more weather-related content. I'll see you guys in the next video.